Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. We didn't do a live last week. For those of you who maybe hadn't joined us throughout the week, I was in trial all last week and had just come off a big win on a homicide. And then last week, crashed and burned. It wasn't pretty. But hence the life of a trial attorney. You're not going to win every case, and sometimes you have to go do the case to make the record for the appellate issues. But it's tough sometimes when you got to sit there and they just keep coming at you and pounding you, and you got to get up there and put on the good fight, so to speak. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Like I said, my name is Scott Reich. This is our Crime Talk Tuesday night live program. For those of you who have not joined us before, like I said, my name is Scott, and I am a practicing criminal defense attorney. Yes, someone who actually does what we want to talk about here, which is criminal defense work, prosecution of criminals. That's what we're doing. And we're talking about it, and I'd like to give you a perspective that you don't always get from other people because I am telling you what's really going on. What are the prosecutors thinking? What are the defense attorneys thinking? And giving it to you straight. Okay. I got no dog in the fight. I'll tell you, I think we talked about lots of cases. And I said, hey, listen, I don't think, this person is innocent. I think they'll ultimately be found guilty, but they're still entitled to a fair trial. They're still entitled to due process because, hey, if we let the government start railroading guilty people, guess what? They are going to start doing it to innocent people as well. So it is those attorneys out there that every day go to court, deal with the routine crime type of stuff and handle the murders, the homicides, the bad cases that everybody hears about. Those are the ones that ultimately make their way up to the appellate courts where everybody actually hears about them and they make new law. Or they reaffirm what we already should have known, that something was illegal. Maybe it was too broad of a search under a search warrant. Well, and guess what? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. Now, is it going to be some law school exam question regarding what we're talking about? No, we're going to talk about the Delphi case and the Richard Allen case. Now, we brought you the story the other day. The attorneys have filed a motion, and I say the attorneys, the defense attorneys for Richard Allen, okay? They filed a 136-page motion in support of Mr. Allen's motion for a Franks hearing. You may say, Scott, what is a Franks hearing? Well, a Franks hearing is when the defense alleges that the prosecutor and the detectives in the case, when drafting an affidavit for either a search warrant or an arrest warrant, any kind of affidavit, that there were material misrepresentations or omissions from that affidavit. And basically saying, hey, judge, probable cause would not have existed had the detective put this information in. Or, judge, what information was put into the affidavit is completely false. The detectives knew about it, should have known about it, and they put it in anyway. And if you remove that, literally redact it, and then take out and put in the new information that they say should be in there, would probable cause exist for a search warrant, an arrest warrant, any type of warrant? So the Franks hearing, it's a federal case. I think it's Delaware v. Franks. I'm sure somebody can look that up, and I'm sure it's Delaware v. Franks, which is the case that brought about. So like I said, now you have to remember, we got the 136 affidavit. It may still be out there, but the prosecution immediately filed a motion saying, seal it, seal it, seal it. You're going to cause an unfair trial. Now, we don't want to do that, but we want to get the truth because we think we're entitled to the truth. Everybody is entitled to the truth. Why not? Right? So we'll see how much we can do. I'm going to try to, 136 pages is a lot to read, particularly in 1 hour. I'm not sure I'll be able to do that. I don't know. We'll see if people are enjoying it. If people aren't enjoying the affidavit, and obviously we'll explain it as we go along, but this is the crux of the defense case. The pagans did it. And they're saying basically that some people wanted to pursue the pagan route and other detectives didn't, and they materially steered the other detectives and the court away from this case, from the truth is what they're alleging. So just so we can, people actually see, this is the memorandum in support of the accused motion for a Frank's hearing. Comes now, the accused, Richard Allen, by and through counsel Andrew J. Baldwin and Bradley A. Rozzi, and files his memorandum in support of his request for a Frank's hearing. Now, let me read the introduction to you, okay? And then we have the table of contents. This is a brief. So we have the table of contents. We have the introduction. Part 1, the crime scene. We'll probably go over a little bit of that since we really haven't had that much information about it. Ought to be good. Part 2, the evidence that connects the Odinists to the murders. Part 3, Liggett concealed and falsified evidence in his search warrant affidavit. Part 4, the Odinites in Westville. And Richard Allen has no ties to Odinism or any religious cult and no ties to the crime scene. So here's what we're going to do. Maybe we won't do a Patreon. We'll just see how things are going. If people are enjoying this, we'll continue. If it's a complete dud and people are snoozing and dropping off, well, I guess we'll move on and we'll end at our hour. But if not, we'll go a little bit longer. All right, so let's begin. Now, this brief is written more like a novel than a legal brief, okay? There's not a whole lot of citations. There's more references to the actual evidence that was found or statements that were made. Not a whole lot of, the motion. I mean, the standard is false information. We don't need to know that. But this is their case. Now, I don't know if they wrote this and they released it for whatever reason, but it's out there. Frank, the hardest running back in show business, he had to dig pretty deep to try to find this. It's not like it was on the front page to the U.S. News or something like that, but we got it. So according to the brief, page 4 of the motion for a brief in support of the Frank's hearing, 8 things to know. Overwhelming evidence in this case supports the following. Remember, this is a Delphi murder case. 1, members of a pagan Norse religion called Odinism, hijacked by white nationalists, ritually sacrificed Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Pretty bold statement. Number 2 of the things you need to know. Very early on, those in charge of the Delphi murder investigation claimed that they consulted with a Purdue professor concerning what resembled possible Odinism signatures left behind at the crime scene. After the Purdue professor proclaimed, according to State Trooper Jerry Holman, that it was not Odinism or any type of cult worshiping or any type of group that would have conducted the crime, the Odinism angle was essentially abandoned. However, as of September 7th, 2023, the leaders of the Delphi investigation team, 1, claim that they can't identify who this purported professor was. 2, have provided no reports from this purported professor. And 3, have further indicated that they may never be able to figure out who this professor is. Based in large part upon this mystery, Purdue professor's opinions, the Delphi investigation leadership claimed that it essentially abandoned considering the Odinite involvement in the murders. And then the years passed, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. Thankfully, during those passing years, law enforcement officers Kevin Murphy, Greg Pharisee, and Todd Click continued to pursue the truth. Because of their curiosity and investigative efforts, the evidence established the names of the likely murdering members of this Odinite cult became known to the Delphi investigative leadership no later than February of 2018. Due to either incompetence or concerted intentionality, those in charge of this investigation refused to arrest or even properly investigate these obvious suspects. Third thing you need to know, according to the defense attorney's brief for Richard Allen. Third, on May 1st, 2023, the state of Indiana, by way of prosecutor Nick McClelland, received a letter from former Rushville Assistant Police Chief Todd Click, now retired. Footnote number 2. Find attached certified mail receipt showing that the Carroll County Prosecutor's Office received the letter on May 1st, 2023, marked as Exhibit 1. As stated in the previous paragraph, Click, Murphy, and Ferency, F-E-R-E-N-C-Y, you pronounce it the way you want to, I'll do it the way I want to, were three of the law enforcement officers who worked on the Delphi murder case, particularly focused on the Odinite angles as it intersected with suspects in Rushville, Indiana. After reading Richard Allen's probable cause affidavit, Click became concerned that the information contained in Richard Allen's affidavit, pointing the finger at Richard Allen, was far less compelling than the totality of the information that Detective Ferency, Detective Murphy, and Officer Click had accumulated during the Rushville portion of the investigation. Now, the information that Murphy, Ferency, and Click had gathered during their investigation connected men who practiced Odinism in or near Delphi with another group of men who live in Rushville, and then connected both groups of the men to the murders. Footnote 3. Find copy of the attached affidavit of Todd Click marked as Exhibit 2. Click was concerned that for some reason, the leadership of the investigative team had failed to share with Prosecutor McClellan the evidence gathered by Click, Ferency, and Murphy. Click's concerns led him to seek out a lawyer to assist him in drafting a letter. The letter was then sent to McClellan. Footnote number 4. A copy of that letter is attached here too, is marked as Exhibit 3. However, sorry, lost my place here because I was reading footnotes. Sorry. This letter was not provided to the defense until after it was obvious from the last round of depositions that the defense, who has doggedly pursued witnesses as far away as Georgia, would certainly be talking with Todd Click. Now, McClellan had this letter in his possession for over 4 months before turning it over to the defense. There can be no mistaking that this letter is exculpatory in nature and could have been used by the defense as it prepared for upcoming depositions. However, it is apparent that McClellan often only offered up the letter after it was obvious that the defense team would soon be learning of the letter's existence. In other words, the defense team would obviously be meeting with or deposing Click in the next few weeks. At that time, Click most certainly would then reveal to the defense that in April of 2023, he, Click, had sent a letter containing exculpatory information to McClellan. At this point, McClellan had two distinct choices. One, sit on the exculpatory evidence, hoping that the defense team would refocus its efforts on another angle of the investigation, or two, disclose the exculpatory evidence, claiming that the contents of the letter were overlooked in the volumes of discovery. He chose the latter. Unfortunately for the state, neither approach explains away the fact that Click specifically directed the letter to McClellan himself, and further, Click was so determined to ensure his information was consumed by McClellan that he directed the information directly to McClellan via certified mail. This letter is stamped, received May 1st, 2023, Carroll County Prosecutor. Click's report landed at ground zero, a prosecutor's office with no more than 2 full-time prosecutors and a handful of full-time staff at best. Could this exculpatory evidence have been completely overlooked? Not plausible. Not only did the prosecution withhold that letter from the defense, but law enforcement also withheld several other exculpatory pieces of evidence, including an 85-page compilation of reports by Click prepared in 2019 and several videos containing statements that support the defense theory of Richard Allen's innocence. This 85-page report detailed the investigative work performed by Click, Ferenczi, Murphy, and others, including the FBI. According to the summary of Click's investigation that he attached to his letter, the Behavioral Analysis Unit of the FBI determined that the individual or individuals responsible for the homicides were involved in Nordic beliefs. This was news to the defense, as no member of the unified command in charge of the investigation revealed this information to the defense during recent depositions. This includes Trooper Holloman, who told the defense that he didn't remember the FBI's BAU unit determined one way or another whether those with Nordic beliefs had been involved in the murders. Footnote 6. The defense will be providing all depositions identified throughout this document separately from the exhibits and will identify the depositions with letters for purposes of the record. Back to the motion. At least up until the time of the filing, the prosecution has provided no evidence whatsoever of the finding of the FBI's BAU unit concerning involvement of the Odinists in the murders. None. The letter that Click sent to McClelland was first that the defense had heard that the FBI actually believed that Odinists were likely involved. In other words, this report contained exculpatory evidence that the unified command concealed from the defense. Now, this information was and is crucial for Richard Allen's defense. Some of this exculpatory evidence in the form of videos was finally released to the defense on September 8th, 2023, over 9 months after defense counsel entered their appearance. The defense is still reviewing the September 8th evidence dump, and in the brief time the defense has had to review this newly received evidence, it has found exculpatory evidence both in the videos that the defense has watched and the documents that the defense has reviewed. While the prosecution has been holding on to this exculpatory evidence, Mr. Richard Allen has been living in hell. Lastly, the evidence will show that the week of August 28th, 2023, Prosecutor McClelland and State Trooper Jeremy Holloman requested a meeting with Todd Click. By this time, the defense team had taken several depositions, including Holloman, Liggett, and Lisenby. And the prosecution and Delphi investigative leadership now knew that for a while, the defense team had been aware of the Odinist evidence, at least the evidence that the prosecution turned over to the defense, scattered throughout multiple hard drives and many flash drives. The prosecution had learned in early August that the defense had figured out the strong Odinist ties to the crime, despite the apparent attempts of the prosecution, Liggett and Holloman, to hide this exculpatory information from the defense. Wanting to allay his fears that an innocent man was sitting in Westville, Click agreed to attend the meeting with Holloman, hoping that he would be learning that evidence did in fact exist linking Richard Allen to the murders. Click's hopes were dashed. Paragraph 17 of Click's affidavit. Here we go, the affidavit. Upon directing the letter to McClelland, I heard nothing from the prosecutor's office or any other member of the Unified Command until I received phone calls on August 23rd and August 25th, 2023, which involved brief discussions regarding scheduling. During these phone calls, it was requested that I meet with Trooper Holloman during the week of September 4th of 2023. I was informed that law enforcement officials intended to sit down with me and discuss with me the reason why Richard Allen was responsible for these crimes. I was told that he, Jerry Holloman, wanted to put my mind at ease. However, during the meeting with Detective Holloman and a second detective whose name I was unfamiliar with, there was no discussion or offering as to why they believed Richard Allen was guilty of the charged crime. I believe the interview was an attempt by them to clean up their loose ends, knowing that they had given very little, if any, attention to the investigative efforts of myself, Detective Ferenczi, and Detective Murphy. Next paragraph. Back to the affidavit, not to the affidavit, but to the brief. 4, not only did Carroll County Sheriff Tony Liggett failed to conclude all this Odinite information in his October 13th, 2022 affidavit for search warrant. And not only did McClellan and the Unified Command withhold exculpatory evidence, Liggett also concealed damaging witness statements that devastate Liggett's timeline, a timeline Liggett needed to be true in order to place Richard Allen at the trail when Abby and Livy were abducted. Additionally, Liggett lied in his affidavit about the statement of another key witness, further devastating Liggett's timeline. Fifth thing that we need to know. Richard Allen has zero connection to any pagan cult or pagan cultists, and furthermore, no forensic evidence such as DNA or electronic evidence links Richard Allen to the girls or to the crime scene, i.e., he is a completely innocent man. 6. Most of the evidence backing these assertions was found scattered over no less than 10 hard drives and several flash drives provided by the prosecution, meaning that the defense is not making wild accusations, but rather primarily relaying facts and information that is backed up by the prosecutor's own discovery, even discovery that the prosecution has just provided to the defense as late as September 8th of 2023. Number 7. Not coincidentally, members Odinists of this same pagan cult are employed as correctional officers for the Indiana Department of Corrections at Westville Correctional Facility. It is inside of the cold, concrete walls of the maximum security unit of this dilapidated reformatory that Richard Allen is being threatened, intimidated, and mentally abused. Footnote 7. Defense counsel is not saying that the Westville guards were involved in the murders, only that they were likely involved in threatening, intimidating, and mentally abusing Richard Allen. Paragraph number 8. Throughout this document, references are made to the Unified Command. Essentially, the Unified Command was the leadership of the Delphi murder investigation, according to Tony Liggett, the Carroll County Sheriff and member of the Unified Command when the investigation began. Unified Command consisted of law enforcement for a variety of entities, local, state, and federal, and the Unified Command were overseers of the entire investigation operation. According to Liggett, the members of the Unified Command were from Carroll County, Tony Liggett and Kevin Hammond; from the state police, Jerry Hallman, Jay Harper, and Dave Vito; and from the FBI, Rich Davies, Daviess. Odinism, Odinites, and runes. Odinism is the pagan religion referenced above, and its followers are called Odinites. Odinites are enamored of Viking Nordic culture, and evidence supports that at the crime scene, these murdering Odinites left behind obvious signatures, symbols in the form of runes. Footnote number 9. Merriam-Webster defines a rune as any of the characters of any several alphabets used by the Germanic people from about the 3rd to the 13th century. These runes were 1, formed with sticks; 2, fashioned with tree branches; and 3, painted using the blood of Libby German. Now, sticks and tree branches were deliberately, carefully, and proficiently placed on each girl in a certain arrangement, mimicking certain runes. At least one of the branches appeared to have its end cut off cleanly by some type of tool like an electric saw, providing proof of a preconceived plan. Additionally, the blood of Libby German was used as the paint to mark a tree with a rune that looks similar to the letter F. Footnote number 10. Many runes look like the letter F, including a rune called ANSUZ, ANSUZ, which, among other things, stands for Odin. All right, done with footnote number 10. Let's go back to the paragraph. With a simple Google search, these runes would be identifiable as one of the many calling cards of this pagan religious cult. Yet law enforcement in charge of the Delphi investigation seemingly and quickly abandoned the obvious correlation between the crime scene and Odinism, despite an obscene amount of evidence linking Odinism to the crime scene, and even in spite of powerful evidence linking specific Odinites in and around Indiana to the murders. Also, the court will learn in his affidavit for search warrant warrant that Sheriff Liggett failed to inform Judge Diner that nothing, absolutely nothing, links Richard Allen to Odinism or any religious cult. Footnote 11, Liggett deposition, page 80, lines 14 to 23. Also, no forensics such as DNA, no electronic data extracted from his computers or phones or from his social media links Richard Allen to the crime scene. Additionally, nothing links Richard Allen to any of the Odinite suspects, the same Odinite suspects that evidence strongly supports sacrificed Abby and Libby in some sort of pagan ritual. Richard Allen had nothing to do with this crime, but rather is an innocent man, a patsy for the police, arrested 26 days before an election. Next paragraph, failure to pursue the Odinist link. Law enforcement's failure to actively pursue the obvious links between the crime scene and Odinism is confounding. It is even more confounding when days and weeks after the murders, a particular Odinite from Logansport named Brad Holder posted on social media images mimicking the very runes found at the crime scene, a crime scene unreleased and unknown to the general public even to this day. Well, until now. Who was Brad Holder? He was an Odinite whose son, Logan, had been dating Abby. Brad Holder's social media posts seemingly taunted the very police that refused to fully investigate him. The defense believes that the court will be shocked at the number of clues or Easter eggs, both before and after the murders, that Holder openly posted on his Facebook page that pointed the finger to his involvement in the murders. However, a fact that is simply mind-blowing to the defense is that Brad Holder was never considered a suspect in the murders of Abby and Libby. State Trooper Jerry Holloman, one of the law enforcement officers in charge of organizing and investigating the Delphi murders, claimed in his August 10th, 2023 deposition that Brad Holder was not really ever a suspect. And they cite to the deposition of Mr. Holloman, page 172, line 4 through 5. Police reports written near the time of the murders reveal that Jerry Holloman is telling the truth. Brad Holder was cleared as a suspect quickly on March 16th of 2017. On March 1st of 2017, Tony Liggett stated in a report that there were no leads required concerning Brad Holder, meaning that it was not necessary for law enforcement to continue to look for leads related to Brad Holder. Liggett made that determination a mere 15 days after the girls were murdered. By March 16th of 2023, Unified Command member Kevin Hammond wrote that Brad Holder has been cleared. The girls hadn't been dead for 30 days and the Unified Command had already cleared Brad Holder as a suspect. Unified Command had already cleared Holder as a suspect within 30 days, knowing that Brad Holder's son dated Abby. Unified Command had already cleared Holder as a suspect within 30 days of the murder, although a simple review of Brad Holder's Facebook page would show that Brad Holder was a proud Odinite and that an absolute obsession and fascination with runes. Police knew or had to know that runes had been left at the crime scene. Additionally, Unified Command had already cleared Holder as a suspect in spite of the fact that the runes found on Brad Holder's Facebook page mimic runes found at the crime scene that had been released to the public. The investigation had barely begun, but the Unified Command had already cleared the very man that any person with even a small amount of common sense or curiosity would believe was a strong candidate for being involved in the murder of the girls. For example, the court will also learn that the Unified Command was aware of a very disturbing image on Brad Holder's social media account that actually mimicked the crime scene. On April 12th of 2017, Trooper Joseph Ryan Winters received a phone call from a man in Georgia named Ryan Boucher, Boucher, who had discovered disturbing images in Brad Holder's social media account. Having somehow learned that Brad Holder's son, Logan, had dated Abby Williams, Mr. Boucher began reviewing Brad Holder's social media history. One of the images Boucher viewed on Brad Holder's social media account was an image of two women, either dead or posed as if they were dead, on the ground in what appeared to be a forest. Both women had tree limbs and sticks arranged around their bodies. One of the women had her arms stretched out above her head, similar to the way that Libby's arms were stretched above her head. Both women were clothed, and the sticks and tree branch formations on these girls was different than the stick and tree branches formation on Abby and Libby, but otherwise it bore a very eerie similarity to the murder scene in Delphi. Now, Ryan Butcher had no knowledge of the actual crime scene. However, after reviewing Brad Holder's social media sites, Butcher was disturbed at the images, as well as other images that provided insight into Brad Holder's fascination with runes. Believing that the disturbing images may be something of interest to those investigating the Delphi murders, Mr. Butcher contacted Toby Leazenby, Leazenby, who at the time was the sheriff of Carroll County. Leazenby quickly rebuffed Butcher, telling Butcher that Holder was not a suspect. Undeterred, Mr. Butcher contacted the state police, where he ended up talking to Trooper Joseph Ryan Winters. After this conversation, Winters memorialized the interaction and placed the images provided by Butcher into a Dropbox account. After creating the report, Winters then discussed his findings face-to-face with Jerry Holloman of the Unified Command. The body of this memorandum will provide details of what interaction. In his report, Winters requested law enforcement to re-interview Brad Holder. The defense does not believe Unified Command ever followed up on Winters' request. It should be noted that the disturbing images found by Butcher in Georgia and placed in a Dropbox by Winters were not and have not and still not been provided to the defense. In his recent deposition, Winters said that he had attempted to locate the images but was unable. However, because of potential importance of those images to Richard Allen's case, the defense team located Butcher and then traveled to Georgia to meet with Butcher. Those images are now in the possession of Richard's defense team, who then provided those images to law enforcement. Again, these were important images that law enforcement failed to turn over to the defense. Instead, the defense located these images in Georgia and then turned them over to the very people who had the obligation to provide them to the defense. Unified Command, which included Tony Liggett, who drafted the affidavit and search warrant, was fully aware of the mimicked crime scene on Brad Holder's social media, as well as other posts that mimicked the exact runes found at the crime scene, but failed to do anything about it and failed to inform Judge Diner of this obvious suspect, Brad Holder, and all of the evidence that existed against Holder, making him a prime suspect. The court will learn in the body of the memorandum that Holder was connected to the crimes, to the crime scene, and the other men who confessed to the crime. The evidence of those connections will be provided in the body of the memorandum, including copies of the images found on Holder's Facebook page at the time of the investigation, which link Holder to the crime scene, as well as to the images found by Ryan Butcher, the law enforcement had failed to turn over to the defense. The defense will also attach what the defense calls the Winters report, which is the memorialization of Trooper Winters' interaction with Ryan Butcher. Liggett provided none of this evidence or information to Judge Diner, but rather allowed Judge Diner to believe that Richard Allen was a lone suspect in the murders, in spite of zero evidence linking Richard Allen to the crime at the time Liggett sought the search warrant 26 days before the election. Now, Unified Command's failure to vigorously pursue the obvious link between the crime scene and Odinism is even more perplexing when the evidence known to law enforcement demonstrated a clear nexus between Brad Holder and at least 4 other suspects: Elvis Fields from Rushville, Patrick Westfall from Delphi, Johnny Messer, Messer from Rushville, and Rod Abrams from Rushville, now living in Connorsville. Unified Command was aware that let me start that paragraph over again. Let me take a little bit of water here. Jeez. We may be here all night. Unified Command was aware that Elvis Fields confessed to his sister that he, Elvis, was involved in the murders, even providing to his sister intimate crime scene details of which only those present at the crime scene would have familiarity. Additionally, Elvis Fields told his sister Mary on February 14th of 2017 that he was present at the killings and that he, Elvis, now had a brother and was part of a gang. In February of 2018, Elvis had been questioned by law enforcement but denied involvements in the murders. However, after being dropped off at his trailer following the questioning, Elvis turned around, walked back to the police car, and according to the police report, asked the state trooper if Elvis's spit is found on one of the girls, but he could explain in a way, would he still be in trouble? The state trooper that heard Elvis utter these words, Kevin Murphy, was not aware of Unified Command, but immediately relayed Elvis's disturbing question to Jay Harper of Unified Command. Elvis also admitted to a different sister, Joyce, that he had in fact spit on one of the girls. Elvis told Joyce that he, Elvis, was on a rail and a bridge with two girls that were killed and that he was going away for a long time. Elvis's alibi for February 13th of 2017 was also probably flawed. State troopers who weren't part of the Unified Command determined that Elvis's roommate concocted a story concerning Elvis's whereabouts on February 13th of 2017. The roommate is named Rod Abrams. Abrams told a story claiming that on February 13th of 2017 that he, Rod Abrams, Elvis Fields, and a man named Ned Smith were visiting a sick friend in Muncie. Unfortunately for Rod Abrams, this story conflicted with the story that Elvis Fields told law enforcement as to Elvis's whereabouts on February 13th of 2017. These shady alibis were relayed to Unified Command. These shady alibis will be further explained in the body of the memorandum. Furthermore, Unified Command knew that on February 1st of 2018, Elvis's sister passed a polygraph examination when asked if she were telling the truth about what Elvis had confessed to her. Unified Command's failure to vigorously pursue this obvious link between the crime scene and Odinism is even more inexplicable when evidence known to law enforcement included information about another Odinite named Patrick Westfall, who was living in Delphi very close to the murder scene on February 13th of 2017. Evidence known to Unified Command included the fact that fellow Odinites, Patrick Westfall and Brad Holder, were close friends as late of January 21st, 2017. However, that friendship ended very abruptly in February 2017. This schism in their friendship resulted from a fight that occurred between Holder and Westfall in February of 2017, where he, Holder, and Westfall were in the woods near a river conducting a ritual. One of them said or did something the other did not agree with, and they no longer talked to each other. The river was near Patrick's house. An intoxicated Brad Holder shared this disturbing information with his ex-wife, Amber Holder. Amber Holder then relayed this disturbing information to law enforcement who were not part of the Unified Command in 2019. These officers then relayed this disturbing information to the Unified Command. Liggett concealed this information from Judge Diner. In 2019, the Unified Command learned that in a totally different conversation with his ex-wife, Brad Holder pointed the finger away from himself and directly at Patrick Westfall as being the person actually responsible for the murders of Abby and Libby. According to the police reports, Brad Holder told his ex-wife, Amber Holder, that Westfall and his people killed Abigail Williams and Libby German because one of their mothers was mixing with other people outside of the mother's race. Further, Unified Command was aware that Brad Holder had told Amber that I can only protect you so much if you keep asking questions. Brad Holder further told his ex-wife Amber that Patrick Westfall had many people backing him, Westfall, up, and that Westfall also had powerful friends. Liggett knew of this information for more than 3 years before Liggett sought a search warrant for Richard Allen's house. Yet Liggett never shared that information with Judge Diner. Additionally, Westfall provided a very weak alibi as to his whereabouts on February 13th of 2017. Westfall told law enforcement that he, Westfall, was at home the afternoon of Monday, February 13th of 2017. The defense is unaware of any search warrant that Liggett sought to enter Westfall's house or whether the Unified Command instructed law enforcement to knock on a single neighbor's door to verify Westfall's alibi. Unified Command's failure to continually pursue the obvious link between the crime scene and Odinism is even more disturbing when evidence known to law enforcement included information about another Odinite named Johnny Messer from Rushville. Johnny was a recruiter for the Odinites and was also the connective tissue between the Odinites from the Delphi area, Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, and this suspect from the Rushville area, Elvis Field and Rod Abrams. Delphi is located 126 miles from Rushville. Law enforcement knew that Johnny Messer was friends with Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall. Law enforcement also knew that Messer was acquaintances with Elvis Fields and Rod Abrams. Unified Command theoretically could claim, and actually appear to be claiming, that this connection is simply a bizarre coincidence. However, Unified Command not only knew that Elvis Field, Rod Abrams, and Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, shared a common acquaintance, Johnny Messer, but also that Elvis Field and Brad Holder followed each other on Facebook and even mimicked each other's Facebook pages, with Elvis Fields actually recreating the photos that Holder posted on his Facebook page. Shockingly, at his August 10th, 2023 deposition, Unified Command member Jerry Holman claimed that he did not even know who Johnny Messer was, nor what the evidence showed of Messer's possible role in the murders of Abby and Libby. It is additionally infuriating that Johnny Messers was cleared as a suspect in the murders when considering these facts. Johnny's ex-girlfriend, Taylor Hornaday, Hornaday, Taylor Hornaday, told police that Johnny Messers and Patrick Westfall were like brothers. She also told the police that she allowed Johnny to borrow her car on or around Valentine's Day of 2017, and Johnny drove her car up there to hang with his Vinlander friends. Vinlander, paragraph or footnote 13. Vinlander is a word interchangeable with those who practice Odinism. As State Trooper Roland Purdy stated in his deposition, all members of Vinlanders are also Odinists. Purdy deposition, page 140, lines 1 through 25. Basically, the Vinlanders are a white supremacist group consisting of Odinists. Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, and Johnny Messer were all affiliated with the Vinlander group. Johnny Messer's ex-girlfriend, Taylor Hornaday, also confirmed that all the Vinlanders are also Odinists, and that Johnny Messer, Brad Holder, and Patrick Westfall were members of the Vinlander. Going back to the memorandum, when he returned his vehicle, it had dried blood over one side of it. Johnny Messer refused to discuss the details of how the blood got there. Johnny Messer's ex-girlfriend further stated that it took her several car washes to finally remove the blood. Meanwhile, Messers had claimed that he had never, not once in his life, been to Delphi, home of his brother Patrick Westfall, and near the home of his other Odinite brother, Brad Holder. Messer's ex-girlfriend also told law enforcement that Brad Holder and Johnny Messer were two of the most violent people she knew and were fully capable of having been involved in the murders. Johnny Messer's ex-girlfriend further stated that a motive for their involvement in the murder of Abby and Libby might be the concept of blood in and blood out, which means social acceptance in their secret circles. All this information was relayed to Liggett and the Unified Command team, yet Unified Command provided no guidance as to what to do to capitalize on this information in order to work towards solving the murders. Additionally, Unified Command learned that Johnny Messer's ex-girlfriend had been listening to and recording Johnny Messer's phone calls. Police secured the phone and listened to these phone calls involving Johnny Messers. In two of these phone calls, Messers was offering money to other people to find someone so they can be injured or killed. The third call involves Messers bragging about holding a subject hostage and shooting them at his house. Essentially, Unified Command said nothing to see here regarding Johnny Messers and issued no search warrants for his home. None had been disclosed to the defense, nor did they attempt to utilize an age-old investigation tool referred to as an interrogation to pursue the truth about the involvement of Johnny Messer, Brad Holder, and Patrick Westfall in the crimes. Many more shocking facts concerning this so-called investigation will be revealed in the body of the memorandum. The Odinites in Westville Correctional Facility guarding Richard Allen. The evidence shows that during the pretrial incarceration at the Westville Correctional Facility, Richard Allen had been monitored, intimidated, and mentally abused by correctional officers who are also members of the Odinite cult. Two of those correctional officers are named Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones. These Westfall correctional officers boldly wore patches on their Department of Correction uniforms that proclaimed, "In Odin we trust," along with another patch displaying symbols of Odinism, interlocking triangles. Both Odinite correctional officers, Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones, also displayed images of runes and other Odinite symbols on their Facebook pages. As recently as June 25th, 2023, for example, Odinite Sergeant Robinson openly displayed a photograph of his Odinite altar on his Facebook page. A similar altar can be found on the Facebook page of Brad Holder. Beginning at least on April 3rd of 2023, Sergeant Jones and Sergeant Robinson wore their Odin patches when the defense team visited Richard Allen. However, Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones' brazen display of their Odinite patches came to an end on August 17th of 2023. What changed? Why suddenly did they no longer display their Odinite patches beginning on August 17th of 2023? Visit between Richard Allen and his defense team? Here's your possible answer. It was not until August 10th of 2023, deposition of Trooper Holloman, that Richard Allen's defense team finally revealed to the prosecution and to Unified Command that for many months they, Richard Allen's defense team, had been fully aware of the strong evidence linking Odinism to the murders. It was also at the August 10th, 2023 deposition that the Unified Command learned that Richard Allen's defense team was not only aware of this information, but also intended to expose the linkage of Abby and Libby's murders to Odinism, and would also be revealing the name of the Odinists at trial. At that deposition, Holman and the prosecutor also learned that the defense teams obviously intended on exposing the Unified Command's utter failure in pursuing the Odinist suspect in spite of the powerful evidence of Odinites involving in the murder. However, and this is important to note, at August 10th of 2023 deposition, Richard Allen's defense team did not let Holloman or anyone else know that the defense team was fully aware of the Odinite correctional officers at the Westville wearing "In Odin We Trust" patches. Richard Allen's defense team next visit with Richard Allen at the Westville following the August 10th, 2023 deposition occurred 1 week later on August 17th of 2023. Curiously, or perhaps not so curiously, and even though 7 days since the defense team revealed their knowledge that the evidence linked Odinist to the murder for the first time, Sergeant Robinson was no longer wearing his Odin patch. Footnote 14, Sergeant Jones was not present at this visit. It was almost as if someone had alerted Odinite Robinson that the gig was up because the lawyers knew about the links to Odinism. So lose the patch and pray that those defense attorneys have never noticed the patch on prior visits. Unfortunately for Westfall and Unified Command, Rick's defense team absolutely noticed the Odinite patches worn by Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones beginning on April 3rd of 2023. Furthermore, Rick's defense team absolutely noticed the conspicuous absence of Sergeant Robinson's Odin patch following Trooper Holloman's realization that Rick's defense team was fully aware of the connection between the murder and Odinism, as well as the failure of the Unified Command to follow through on the evidence that linked the murder to Odinism. The court will also learn in the body of this memorandum that Sergeant Jones and Sergeant Robinson were seemingly always by Richard Allen's side during most, if not every, visit. Normally, correction officers, usually Sergeant Robinson and or Sergeant Jones, were within earshot of every conversation between Richard and his attorneys and between Richard and his wife, close enough that Richard would have to be worried about any conversation with his attorneys and his wife being overheard by Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones or other correctional officers. Beginning on April 3rd of 2023 and for several visits thereafter, the Westville correctional officers were even videotaped attorneys' visits between Richard and his defense team. Most of the time, if not every time, it was Sergeant Jones or Sergeant Robinson bringing the handheld camcorder to the visit. Correctional officers even required that Richard Allen be positioned facing the window where the correctional officers was videotaping the attorney visit with a handheld camcorder. This positioning of Richard Allen's body would allow the correctional officers to videotape Richard Allen's mouth as he talked to his attorneys. Richard would therefore not be able to privately discuss anything with his attorneys, such as the guards are telling me that my wife and family will be killed unless I call my wife and tell her that I killed those girls. Footnote 15. To be clear, up to this point, Richard Allen has never spoken these words to his attorney. The point is that the Westville guards have made the privacy needed for Richard to have that type of private conversation with his attorneys very difficult and perhaps not worthy of the risk if you are Richard Allen. The plot thickens. That's all I can say. Instead, a mentally defeated Richard Allen would continually mutter to his defense at every visit these types of general questions. Is my wife alive? Is my family alive? Is my wife safe? Is my family safe? At one such meeting with his attorney, Richard Allen mumbled in a somewhat incoherent fashion that Odinites were threatening him. It would be important to know that Richard Allen's defense team had never mentioned the word Odinites or Odinism or informed Richard Allen that evidence suggests that the Odinites murdered Abby and Libby until August 25th of 2023, when his defense team, in the presence of his wife, was visiting with Rick in the prison, first discovered the exculpatory Odin-related evidence to Rick. Rick's defense team felt that having him remain unaware would hopefully keep Rick a bit safer due to Rick's weakened mental state and the concern that he might unwittingly discuss his attorney's tragedy to Sergeant Jones and Sergeant Robinson. Rick's attorneys opted to not discuss Odinism with his client out of fear that Sergeant Robinson or Sergeant Jones would then be on alert that Richard's defense team was aware of the Odinite involvement. Richard's defense team needed additional time to investigate and review evidence before feeling confident and comfortable in revealing their knowledge to the court of the strong evidence that Odinites murdered the girls and that the Unified Command had chosen to do nothing about it, but in fact had hidden these facts from Judge Diner. Therefore, Richard's defense team opted to keep Richard in the dark about the Odinites' connection to the murders supported by the evidence. Paragraph 16, footnote 16, I should add. This decision was painfully and emotionally difficult for Rick's defense team, as defense counsel recognized that while the defense took the necessary time to review the discovery to establish the Odinist link both to the murders and to the Westville Correctional Facility, defense counsel was also aware that Rick would remain in his hellhole at Westville subject to the cruelty of Sergeant Jones and Sergeant Robinson and perhaps other Odinite correctional officers. This was especially painful at the June 15th, 2020 hearing to transport Rick to Cass County, as defense counsel knew at the time of the links between the murder and the Odinism and Westville. Unfortunately, defense counsel needed additional time to fully understand and verify the facts before leveling such accusations. This is the reason that the defense tactically decided to keep its knowledge to itself rather than reveal the knowledge in open court at the hearing. Unified Command and the prosecution had McClellan offered the exculpatory documents sooner. Perhaps then Rick would have filed for a speedy trial or would have been removed from Westville, as the defense would have been able to more fully inform the court about the facts of the case. Okay, that was footnote 16. Back to the memorandum. Again, more detailed information concerning the Odinite correctional officers, as well as the documents supporting that information, will be provided in the body of the memorandum. Next paragraph. Liggett's concealed certain witness testimony and falsified other witness testimony in order to prevent Liggett's bogus timeline from being exposed to Judge Diner. Beyond the shocking omissions concerning the pagan cult's links to the murders and the fact that Odinists were also watching Richard Allen, akin to foxes watching the henhouse, the evidence will show that Liggett's affidavit for search warrant is also filled with lies and other concealed information concerning witness testimony. This false and concealed information completely eviscerates the state's timeline. The evidence will show that Tony Liggett knew of the major problems that these witnesses' testimonies created, and Liggett chose to solve his problem by concealing the information and even falsifying other information in order to bolster the state's bogus timeline. That's a pretty bold accusation for somebody to basically say that everybody is lying. Pretty bold. Let's see if you can back it up. The evidence will show that Liggett concealed facts concerning descriptions that key witnesses Betsy Blair made directly to Liggett face-to-face in 2019 concerning, 1, that the person she, Betsy Blair, observed on the bridge, and 2, a vehicle that she, Betsy Blair, observed at the CPS parking lot at around 2:15 p.m. For Liggett's timeline to work and to place Richard Allen on the Monon High Bridge at 2:13, the time of the famous Down the Hill video, Liggett desperately needed Betsy Blair to describe a man on the bridge that looked like Richard Allen, and furthermore, desperately needed Betsy Blair to describe a car that she observed parked at the CPS parking lot at approximately 2:15 p.m. as looking like Richard Allen's black Ford Focus. Suffice it to say, the evidence will show that Liggett concealed from Judge Diner that Betsy Blair described a man on the bridge that looked like Richard Allen and described a car at the CPS that looked nothing like Richard Allen's car, both in color and design. The evidence will show that Betsy provided these timelines, defeating descriptions directly to Liggett face-to-face 2 times back in 2019, yet Liggett failed to inform Judge Diner of the descriptions as well as inform Diner of the fatal flaws that these missing descriptions created for that timeline. The evidence will also show that Liggett just flat out lied about what he claimed Sarah Carbaugh told him in 2017 concerning a man walking down the road near the murder scene. For Liggett's timeline to work, Liggett needed Sarah Carbaugh to describe a man walking down the road wearing a blue jacket, who had blood covering his clothes. However, in 2017, Sarah did not say these things. This did not prevent Liggett from affirming under oath that Sarah Carbaugh did not say those things. In fact, what Sarah Carbaugh actually told Liggett in 2017 was that she, Carbaugh, observed a man walking down the road wearing a tan coat whose clothes were muddy. Nowhere did Carbaugh claim in 2017 that the man she observed wearing a blue coat. Nowhere did Carbaugh claim in 2017 that the man she observed was wearing bloody clothes. Nowhere. This truth of what Sarah Carbaugh actually told Liggett in 2017 blows up Liggett's timeline, which is likely reason Liggett failed to include this information in the affidavit. Additional evidence will be presented in the body of this memorandum. The defense believes that the evidence strongly suggests the contention that Liggett intentionally concealed evidence from Judge Diner and lied about other evidence to Judge Diner in his affidavit for search warrant. However, even if Liggett did not intentionally conceal evidence from the judge or did not intentionally place false information into a search warrant affidavit, at a minimum, Liggett behaved recklessly when he prepared the affidavit, omitting those facts from Judge Diner and providing false information in the affidavit. As stated in the motion accompanying this brief, the defense must show that Liggett either intentionally or recklessly omitted facts from the affidavit or provided false statements in the affidavit. That is the issue of law. All this other stuff is good reading. Reads like a mystery novel, does it not? I think it does. But that is the issue, the affidavit. Were there material omissions or misrepresentations? Was it done recklessly or knowingly? That's the issue that the court has to decide. And if the court is convinced, then they would have to basically say there was no affidavit, there was no search warrants, it was flawed, and any evidence that they have, poof, would go away as it related to Mr. Allen. Next paragraph. Evidence supporting these facts were needless in a giant haystack of discovery. To conclude the introductory portion of this memorandum, the defense would tell the court that the evidence supporting these assertions Contained throughout this memorandum was buried deep in a mountain of discovery, thousands upon thousands of pages of paperwork and hundreds of hours of video, but not buried deep enough. The court will know at the conclusion of this memorandum that the defense is not inventing, fabricating, or exaggerating these facts, no matter how crazy those facts may appear. Richard Allen's defense team is attaching to his memorandum the supporting documentation that provides proof that these facts are true. The memorandum will consist of 5 parts. Part 1 will be a description of the crime scene. This description will provide the important and necessary context that will allow understanding for the rest of the memorandum and will also provide insight into the preposterous claim by Sheriff Liggett that one and only one person was responsible for these murders. This will be important as sheriff must claim that Richard Allen acted alone in order to dispel the massive evidentiary foundation that supports the likelihood that the pre-planned abduction and ritualistic murder of Abby and Libby required multiple Odinites in order to succeed. Part 2 will detail the evidence that connects the Odinites to the murder. Tony Liggett concealed this evidence from Judge Diner when Liggett prepared and signed under oath his affidavit for search warrant. The section is long, detailed, and factually dense, especially for those not living and breathing in this case. At the beginning of Section 2, Defense Counsel has provided a Delphi murder infographic, a veritable visual representation of the major players mentioned in this memorandum, as well as a list of names and the relevance of those names found in the memorandum. These documents are offered as reference tools for assistance in unpacking these dense facts. Part 3 will detail the information that confirms that Tony Liggett concealed evidence in his search warrant affidavit concerning statements of Betsy Blair and fabricated statements in the search warrant affidavit concerning Sarah Carbaugh. Part 4 will consist of the evidence that Odinite correctional officers in leadership have been positioned to watch/guard/intimidate Richard Allen since at least as early as April 2023. This section will also provide images of patches worn by Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones, as well as images taken from their Facebook pages. Part 5 will include information concerning how Richard Allen became a patsy in the investigation 26 days before the election. This section will include information that Liggett failed to provide in his search warrant affidavit concerning the trustworthiness of Dan Doolin's so-called report. Part 5 will also address the complete lack of evidence that linked Richard Allen to the murders, including analysis of the weak evidence that Liggett relied on in his affidavit as he, Liggett, attempted to persuade Judge Diner that the evidence of the murders would be found in Richard Allen's home. Whew. That's 27 pages, ladies and gentlemen. It's 136. 30 pages an hour. Welcome to my world, ladies and gentlemen. Need to take a little bit of drink of water there. All right. I think we're going to do the crime scene. I think that's going to be the interesting part. Yeah. And if it gets too graphic, we will use my editorial discretion to do that. All right. Part 1, the crime scene, goes from page 28 to 45. All right. So I'm thinking no Patreon tonight. We're just going to read through this. And then what I think we'll do, Frank, is let's put this up. We can either put it up at Patreon or scottreich.com, right? This is long. These guys spent some time on this. It sounds like they literally have been living and breathing this case, the defense attorneys for Richard Allen. This is page 28 here. The crime scene. Dun, dun, dun. Now remember, this is what they have. No one's been able to tell us anything about it. And this was released. And I can't remember. I mean, somehow this got filed, but it wasn't sealed, or somehow a newspaper got a hold of it. I don't know. Well played. Well played. And, I'm going to drop off today a copy of this, right? All right, let's get to it, ladies and gentlemen. All right. All right. We picked up, we're at 525 people watching us. So I guess some people like me to do a dramatic reading. All right. The crime scene. When members of a search party found the girls in the late morning of February 14th of 2017, Abby and Libby had been missing for approximately 22 hours. The scene was ghoulish. Libby was found at the base of a tree with 4 tree branches, varying sizes, intentionally placed in a very specific and arranged pattern on her naked body. Libby was positioned flat on her back, with her left arm stretched above her head, touching the base of the large tree. Libby's right hand was covered in blood. Libby's left hand was covered in blood. Blood spots and blood drippings were seen all over Libby's body from head to toe. Libby's right arm was placed along the right side of her body. One large tree branch had been placed on her left shoulder. This branch was so long that it extended above Libby's head several feet and below her legs for several feet as well. 2 smaller branches formed a V where her legs joined her body near her genitalia, with both sides of the V extending upward towards Libby's head, with one branch extending to the left of Libby's head and the other to the right of Libby's head. The last of the 4 branches extended across Libby's body on a line from her right shoulder to her left shoulder. This 4th tree branch also connected with the other 3 branches and was placed under both branches that formed the V. Libby's sliced neck was partially covered by this 4th branch. There appeared to be no blood sprayed or dripping onto the leaves or the tree near Libby's head and sliced neck. It appeared likely that Libby had been killed at a nearby tree and then dragged to her final resting place, where she was then positioned before having the tree limb placed on her in a very specific pattern. The murderers treated Abby very differently. Abby was found just a few feet away from Libby. Her body was not placed parallel to Libby, but rather at an angle, with Abby's legs just a few feet from Libby's legs. However, both of their heads were found a few feet farther apart from each other. Significant differences existed between how Libby's body was found and how Abby's body was found. Abby was not found at the base of the tree. Abby was fully clothed. In fact, Abby was dressed in Libby's sweatshirt and jeans. No blood appeared on Abby's clothing, meaning that she was likely murdered while naked and then dressed by the murderers after she expired and after the blood had stopped spilling from her neck. Abby's hands were clean, no blood. Abby's feet were clean, no blood. Other than blood found around Abby's neck area, where the murderers had inflicted the fatal wound, very little, if any, blood was found anywhere else on Abby's body or clothing. The juxtaposition of the spots and streaks of the blood found all over Libby's body, with the lack of blood on Abby's body's undergarments, overgarments, is stark. The murders appeared to have gone to great lengths to keep Abby's body and clothing clean from blood. Abby was found on her back like Libby. However, unlike Libby, Abby's elbows were bent with their right and left arms both placed on her chest. Abby's left hand and arm near the left side of her face, and her right hand and arm near the right side of her face. Also, Abby's left leg was straight while her right leg was bent at the knee. The murderers also placed her bent right leg under her left leg. Like Libby, those involved in the murder had placed tree branches in a very specific pattern on top of Abby. The pattern looks very similar to an asterisk consisting of 3 tree branches all joined in the middle. Footnote 17. This stick configuration is a spot-on resemblance for the rune called Hagal, Hagal. This rune is used to depict the word hail, Therefore, the combination of the Hegel rune found on Abby and Anzus, A-N-Z-U-S rune found on the tree, when combined, would proclaim Hail Odin. This sentiment, Hail Odin, was one of the many Easter eggs Brad Older left behind on his Facebook page on multiple posts. Back to the paragraph. At least one of these tree branches appears to have been cleanly cut by some instrument, like an electric saw, rather than split or broken by hand, indicating this was a preconceived plan. Above Abby's head were smaller sticks that had been placed over her hair, crudely mimicking horns or antlers. The amount of blood that would be perhaps expected at the crime scene, based upon the location of the injuries of both girls, was not visible at the crime scene photos. Footnote 18. The defense team speculates that because of the lack of blood visible in the crime scene photos, especially concerning Abby, that the murderers may have saved the blood to be used in future rituals. This is merely a theory, admittedly not supported by any facts currently in possession of the defense, but a theory that would certainly explain the lack of expected blood at the crime scene. Back to the memo. The defense has provided the court with 12 crime scene and autopsy photographs marked as Exhibits 5 through 16 as confidential. These photographs support the description provided in the previous paragraphs. In addition to the unusual way the girls were posed, including the stick formation placed on their bodies, another unusual marking was found on a nearby tree. A symbol that looked similar to the letter F appeared approximately 4 feet above the base of the tree. Footnote 19. The F resembles a rune called Anzus, A-N-S-U-Z, which stands for Odin. Again, when paired with the Hegel rune found on Abby, the combination would proclaim Hail Odin. This F symbol was the same F symbol found in many of Brad Holder's Facebook pages, which would be attached, including Holder's creepy self-drawn illustration in which the red F rune was found at the base of the tree, where a man appeared to be sacrificed on a tree. Okay. The F was red in color, and later DNA testing showed that the F had been painted on the tree using Libby's blood as the so-called paint. Additional blood spatter was found at the base of the same tree. All the blood at the base of the tree appears to have been Libby's blood as well. The defense has also provided with the court with Exhibit 17 DNA documentation supporting the fact that Libby's blood was the source of the F painted on the tree. Said exhibit is marked as confidential. The defense also provided 2 photos of this F found at the nearby tree, hereinafter called the F tree. Exhibits 18 and 19 marked as confidential. Defense is also providing a photo of the F tree from a wider angle for the court to have perspective as to where the F tree is located relative to the bodies. The confidential photo has been marked as Exhibit 20. Under Abby's left lower back, a shoe was found. The shoe is believed to be Libby's shoe. Now, under the shoe, a cell phone was found. The cell phone was later determined to be Libby's phone. The information was confirmed by the recent deposition testimony of Liggett, Lesenby, and Holman. According to recent depositions taken of Sheriff Liggett, the famous video of the person that many people called the bridge guy was found on this phone. Additionally, allegedly found between the girls, buried under the leaves, and the dirt was a single bullet. The defense has provided 2 photos of the shoe and the cell phone found under Abby's legs and marked as Exhibit 21 and 22 and have been filed confidentially. Also, the defense has provided 3 photos of a bullet reportedly found in the ground between Abby and Libby, marked in these photos as Exhibits 23, 24, and 25. It should be noted that as of the date of this memo, the defense has no photographs of the bullet allegedly found between the girls after it was removed from the ground. No photo or video, for example, shows the bullet as it is being pulled out of the ground. No photo or video of the bullet immediately after it was pulled from the ground. No video or photograph of all sides of the bullet immediately after it was pulled from the ground. No photographs of the bullet next to the measuring device to show its length. No photos that show the bullet looked like once it was pulled out of the ground. could provide proof that it was the same bullet that ended up in evidence locker room. Footnote 20. On September 8th of 2023, the defense did receive photographs of the bullet at the forensic lab where it was tested. However, the defense still has not received photos of the bullets from the crime scene of the crime scene technicians pulling out the bullet from the ground or placing it into evidence bag, as is standard practice, especially in murder cases. Back to the memo. Shockingly, in his deposition, Sheriff Liggett admitted that he also has not seen any photographs of the purported bullet taken once the bullet was pulled from the ground. In other words, the only photos that the defense has found in the discovery it has received are the bullet still buried in the ground. At the time, the defense had no idea if A, photos of the bullet after it was removed from the ground even exist, or 2, the photos exist, but the state has not yet turned those important photographs over to the defense, or 3, the defense has missed these photos in the voluminous discovery. Either way, the defense has asked the prosecutors to please locate these paragraphs. One man alone completed all these tasks in less than 1 hour and 17 minutes. Footnote 2022. That's Liggett's deposition, page 67, line 13 through 19. Liggett says one thing publicly, but another thing privately to his law enforcement friends. Publicly, Liggett has claimed under oath that one single solitary person was responsible for abducting and murdering the girls, Richard Allen. Claiming publicly that Richard Allen acted alone would allow Liggett to continue proclaiming that the murders were not the result of the coordinated abduction and subsequent ritualistic sacrifice at the hands of a pagan religious cult. No, if Liggett continues trying to convince everyone publicly that one man and one man alone, Richard Allen, performed all of these tasks, then Liggett must convince others, including the public, to ignore the voluminous mountains of evidence that support the coordinated effort of multiple Odinites. However, you will learn later in this memorandum that Liggett's claim that one man acting alone, and certainly not an organized band of cultists, murdered those girls is actually not something that he, Liggett, believes privately based upon one-on-one conversations with other law enforcement. To be fair to Liggett's public proclamations under oath, let's test Liggett's claim that the one man, Richard Allen, acted alone by reviewing all the tasks that this 5'4" man would have to accomplish in order to pull off this abduction, ritualistic murder, and then stage crime scene as it was found on February 14th of 2017. 1, the man would have to have been solely responsible for marching Abby and Libby down a steep hill. 2, this one man then would have to march both girls through the woods for some distance. 3, at some point this single solitary man would have to cross a cold river whose depth was nearly 3.5 feet. At this depth in the water, or only 2 feet higher, Richard's whole body would have been completely immersed from head to toe. With the cold river water rising well above his waist, this man acting alone has to worry about himself crossing the rushing river while also trying to corral 2 girls, keeping them from running or screaming, knowing that houses were not far away. This man on his own would have to then march the girls up to the site of the murder, while all 3, because of the depth of the water, were wearing ungarmented pants, shirts, jackets, socks, and shoes that were drenched with water from the river crossing. Once he and the girls arrived at the murder scene, this single solitary person then somehow would have to subdue either Abby or Libby in rope or some other restraining device in order to have the ability to kill the unsubdued child without fear that the other would run away or scream. 7, because of the lack of blood on the girl's clothing, each child will have to have been completely disrobed before the single solitary man sliced his first victim's neck, so the man acting alone either asked each child to disrobe or he assisted them in disrobing. Trooper Jerry Holman of the United Command has confirmed that both girls were naked at one point in time, as Liberty was found in the crime scene completely naked, while evidence showed that Abby at one point in time had her clothes off. Once the girls were disrobed and naked in the middle of the forest in the middle of the day in February, and once subdued, one of the girls to prevent her from running away, the man acting alone would finally kill the girls. This man acting alone would have to pull the ceremonial knife or whatever sharp instrument was used to inflict fatal injuries to the neck of the first child. It is unknown which child perished first, while the second child watched, hopefully without screaming or becoming so hysterical that the said child was uncontrollable. The man acting alone would then walk over to the second child, who was somehow subdued, and inflict the same fatal injuries to her neck. The autopsy notes by Liggett reveal that the pathologist stated that because of the particular vein that was severed, Abby suffered a slow death. To give Liggett as much additional time needed to sell their preposterous story that one man committed all of this task in a short period of time, we will presume that the one man acting alone took Abby's life first and Libby's second, so that the lone killer could efficiently handle all of the other tasks necessary while Abby suffered her slow death. Additionally, even after Abby finally would have died, the man acting alone would have had then to wait enough time so that the blood escaping Abby's neck would stop flowing, and there was little to no blood found on any of the clothing of Abby was wearing other than around the neck and undergarments, meaning the single solitary man likely clothed Abby's dead body after the flow of blood ceased. Once this man acting alone inflicted injuries to Abby's neck, she was dying a slow death. He would have left Abby on the ground somewhere away from there. She ultimately laid to rest, as there was little blood at the scene where she laid to rest, and posed where the man acting alone placed sticks on her body. While awaiting for Abby to die her slow death, the man acting alone would have then used his ceremonial knife or whatever sharp object he used to inflict Libby's fatal injuries at the base of the F tree and where Libby's blood was found. Well, one, waiting for Abby to die her slow death, and two, while waiting for the blood to stop escaping from Abby's fatal injuries, the man acting alone would then grab Libby's body from the F tree, where she was probably killed, dragging her to the final resting place at the base of the tree where she was found. While waiting for one, Abby to die her slow death, and then waiting for the blood to stop draining from Abby's neck, this man acting alone then would have to pose for the position of Libby's dead body in the manner for which the dead body was found at the scene. While waiting for one, Abby to die her slow death, and two, then waiting for the blood to stop draining from Abby's neck, this man acting alone would then select a variety of tree branches and sticks with the ultimate purpose of placing them on Libby's dead body. After selecting the branches and sticks, this man acting alone would then gather those sticks and branches. After gathering the selected branches and sticks, the man acting alone would then have to carefully arrange the sticks in the pattern found at the crime scene. This man acting alone would have to take the largest and longest of the branches and use his dexterity to lift the large branches over Libby's left shoulder next to her head. Next, the man acting alone would have to have taken a smaller stick and placed it under Libby's neck on a straight line from Libby's right shoulder to her left shoulder, but over the previously laid out large branch that the man acting alone had placed over Libby's left shoulder, described in paragraph 14a. Next, the man would have to grab one of the longer sticks and place it on Libby's right thigh near her genitalia. This stick would then be placed alongside the right side of Libby's towards her head, but over the shorter stick discussed in 14c. The sticks starting near Libby's genitalia would form the right half of the V alongside the stick discussed in paragraph 14d. Next, in order to form what can be described as the V, the man acting alone would take another stick, place it on Libby's left thigh near her genitals, and connect it with the stick described in 14c to form the base of V. Then this man would run that stick essentially along the left side of Libby's body over the large tree branch that's mentioned in paragraph 14a. The stick placed on Libby's left thigh would also be connected with, and many be attached to the photo, makes it hard to tell, the stick described in 14b. At some point, once the blood draining from Abby's neck had stopped, this man acting alone would then have to gather the discarded clothing from both girls. This man would then have to redress Abby's dead body, starting with the undergarments Abby was wearing, without leaving any blood, Abby's, or Libby's, on the undergarments, except around the neck area where Abby had been mortally wounded. This man acting alone would have to use his dexterity to lift Abby's dead body in order to move the first bra onto Abby's dead body. The man acting alone would then have to use his dexterity to lift Abby's body in order to maneuver the first bra under her back. The man acting alone would then have to use his dexterity to secure this black bra onto Abby. The man acting alone would then have to locate the second bra that Abby was wearing. The man acting alone would then again have to use his dexterity to lift Abby's dead body in order to maneuver the second bra onto Abby's dead body. This man acting alone would then use his dexterity to secure a second woman's bra onto Abby. And once both bras were secured onto Abby's dead body, this man acting alone would have to locate the pink shirt that Abby was wearing underneath the sweatshirt. Once this pink shirt was located, the man acting alone would likely have positioned Abby's arms above her head to make it easier to place the pink shirt on Abby's dead body. Once Abby's arms were positioned above her head, then the man acting alone would have to place the opening at the bottom of the pink shirt just above Abby's overstretched arms. Once the bottom of the opening of the pink shirt was positioned just above Abby's overstretched arms, the man acting alone would have to use his dexterity by lifting Abby's left arm and placing it into the pink shirt. Once the man acting alone maneuvered Abby's left hand and left arm through the bottom of the pink shirt, he would have to use his dexterity to move Abby's left hand and left arm toward the left hole of the pink shirt. Once the man acting alone had used his dexterity to maneuver Abby's left hand and left arm toward the left arm hole in the pink shirts, he would have to use his dexterity to pull the left arm through the left hole of the pink shirt. And once the left arm was successfully pulled through the shirt, a left hole in the pink shirt, the man acting alone would have to use his dexterity by picking up Abby's right arm and placing it in the bottom entry hole of the pink shirt. Once the man acting alone used his dexterity to maneuver Abby's right hand and right arm toward the right armhole in the pink shirt, he would have to use his dexterity to pull the right arm through the right armhole on the pink shirt. And once the man acting alone successfully maneuvered Abby's right and left arms through the armholes, then he would have to use his dexterity by using one hand to lift the upper portion of Abby's body, while using the other hand to pull the pink shirt towards Abby's midsection until the shirt was properly dressed on Abby. Additionally, the man acting alone would use his one hand to pull the pink shirt towards Abby's midsection and would have to lift Abby's body high enough off the ground to avoid getting any dirt on the pink shirt, as the photographs show that the pink shirt was clean. It is likely that the once murdered redressed Abby in her pink shirt and the pink shirt never touched the damp, dirty ground, as there was no dirt on the shirt whatsoever, unlike the wet dirt found on Libby's backside and the wet dirt also found on the sweatshirt Abby was ultimately dressed in. This would mean that once the man redressed Abby in the pink shirt, that he would have likely held up the upper portion of Abby's body with one hand while grabbing the sweatshirt with the other before placing the sweatshirt on Abby. In order to put the sweatshirt on Abby, once he was able to locate Libby's sweatshirt, then this man acting alone likely positioned at least one of Abby's arms above her head as to make it easier for the man to put Libby's sweatshirt onto Abby's body. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was 39 of all the various steps. The defense gives 92. I think you get the gist of all the stuff that they say that they're going to do. Let's get to the juicy. What page? Go to page 43 here. Actually, 42. One man, 5 foot 4 inches in stature, handle all of these tasks, from the abduction at the high bridge to the crossing over the cold flowing river to the subduing of one girl while the other is killed to the killing of the second girl, waiting while Abby died a slow death, and clothing Abby with very little to any blood transfer on said clothing, to the arrangements of the sticks into the runes, to the painting of the F rune on the tree, to the throwing of the clothing items into the river, to the departure from the crime scene, and finally traversing hundreds of yards through the forest and then up a steep hill, and then another 100 or more yards until finally reaching 300 north, all while being so careful as to not leave any DNA or any other forensic evidence behind. Were all these acts committed by one man acting alone? All these things occurred between 17 minutes and 1 hour and 17 minutes after the girls heard the phrase "down the hill" at approximately 2:13. Again, not plausible. At his August 8th, 2023 deposition, Sheriff Liggett was adamant that one person and one person alone, Richard Allen, was involved in the murder of Abby and Libby. However, off record, Liggett doesn't believe that one man was capable of pulling off all of those tasks, especially in such a short period of time, leaving behind a crime scene with no forensic evidence. As referenced to earlier, Liggett says one thing publicly under oath, but a different thing off record to his buddies. One of those buddies is former sheriff and now Chief Deputy Sheriff Toby Leazenby, Leazenby. The day after Liggett's August 18th deposition, Toby Leazenby was subject to a deposition. When Toby Leazenby was asked, at his deposition how many people he believed were involved in the murder of Abby and Libby, Leazenby provided a different answer than Liggett. Leazenby, indicated that at least two people were involved. The reason Leazenby gave as to his belief at least two people were involved is the murders was Leazenby's belief that it would be difficult for one individual to accomplish what occurred. When asked if any other law enforcement officers shared this perspective, Leazenby provided a surprising answer based upon what Liggett had testified to. Under oath the day before. Yes, at least one of the law enforcement officer believed multiple people were involved. Hold on here. Let me go back. Sorry. Yes, at least one other law enforcement officer believed multiple people were involved in the murder of Abby and Libby. Tony Liggett. According to Leazenby's sworn statement, it was common that Leazenby and Tony Liggett to have one-on-one conversations, and that Tony Liggett definitely believed that more than one person was involved. Tony Liggett, who just the day before under oath claimed that only one person, Richard Allen, was involved in the murders privately behind scenes, was saying something altogether different in one-on-one conversations with his law enforcement friends. If a cult consisting of more than one person is coordinated fashion lured these girls to the bridge, abducted the girls, and then collectively were able to perform all the tasks mentioned in the previous paragraph, that perspective would cut against Liggett's sworn claim that the murderer acted alone. Conversely, even more problematic for Liggett is that stating under oath what he, Liggett, actually believes, i.e. more than one person was involved in the murder of Abby and Libby, would then lend credence to the fact that the accumulation of evidence gathered by Murphy, Ferenczi, and Click strongly support that on February 13th, 2017, several men from a pagan religious cult were involved. For some reason, Liggett is obviously not interested in wanting anyone, including Judge Diner, to know that the evidence strongly supports an organized pagan cult as being the killers. Therefore, sadly, it is not surprising that Liggett lied under oath when he claimed in his deposition that only one man acting alone. If Liggett had told Judge Diner that he, Liggett, believed that multiple people were involved in the crime, and if Liggett also provided Judge Diner with this massive amount of missing details to the Odinite involvement in the murders, including the evidence of the Odinite inmate knowledge of the scene, there is no way Diner would have or should have signed the search warrant. This court will be considering whether Liggett intentionally or recklessly concealed information and intentionally fabricated facts in his affidavit for search warrant. Liggett's duplicity under oath about the number of people he felt were involved in the murders is just one of many reasons to support the belief that Liggett intentionally concealed evidence and fabricated other evidence in the sworn affidavit. Whew! Well, I don't know about you. I mean, yes, I've read most of it here now, and I perused the other part of it. There's certainly some juicy stuff in here. Is it going to be enough to get the search warrants thrown out? To be determined. But what I think is interesting is, why would they not want all the people to know the facts early on? I just don't get it. I understand. Oh, Scott, they're just trying to protect the people so that, the information doesn't get out there. Things only somebody involved would know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. I mean, is it a coincidence where these branches and things like that just pulled over the bodies just to get somebody there? Did they do something and maybe they didn't know what they were dressing them with? I mean, who knows? All I know is I want to see this trial, if it takes place, be televised. I want to see the motions hearings. I want to see the government's response explaining away all this. What they're going to say is it's not relevant to probable cause, Judge. We don't have to put everything in the affidavit. You got to certainly consider exculpatory information. That's for sure. Now, you don't need, God, what was the guy's names escape me? What was the case up in Salida where it's like 120-page affidavit? Barry Morphew case. And, ultimately that turned out to be a joke and ultimately dismissed. And now the prosecutors are being sued and the detectives are being sued. So this is, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think we've covered a good chunk of it. We get a good feel for it here. Part 2, the evidence that connects the Odinites to the murder. I mean, we got a kind of a brief part of that in their introduction. So I don't think I need to go over that again, unless you all really, really want me to. Maybe let me know, and I'll spend a couple hours reading it tomorrow, and we can put it up on that. But I think the introduction was a good, obviously a good summary. And the defense attorneys are claiming that these other individuals who live in the area, who are a member of this pagan Odinite religious cult, did it, and that they had all kinds of stuff on their Facebook page. Is this total trial psychosis by the defense attorney, believing their own hocus pocus? Or is this real? I don't know. I can tell you, though, over the course of my career, every now and then I've had a situation where it just sounded so bizarre, you couldn't believe it, and then it turned out to be true. So I don't know what's taking place here. We're certainly going to follow it. I certainly hope the prosecution responds publicly so that we can see what the heck is going on. That's for sure. So, all right, we went a little long tonight. Not going to go do our Patreon. I kept everybody late. Sorry about that. But I thought this was worth reading. And understand, we only got through page 45. There's 136 pages remaining. 90 to go, ladies and gentlemen. 90 to go. Plus, the attorneys for Mr. Allen also supplied exhibits to support this. So it looks like it's very well briefed. I mean, it reads like a whodunit, that's for sure. And we'll have to wait and see. The prosecution may have some burden to overcome here for sure. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, all right. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Let's see if there's did we miss any super chats or anything, Frank? Oh my goodness. Well, let's answer the super chats. Wow, this really does read like a hardback novel and a motion for the court. Thanks for going over this, Scott. Thank you. Really enjoy it. Thank you, Mama Pink. Appreciate that. Liz W, super sticker. Appreciate that as well. Jody, great content, Scott. Appreciate that. I can summarize all this stuff, but man, I'm telling you, sometimes this is the type of stuff you got to go straight to the source. You got to read it yourself or have me, read it to you as well. Jody, Laura, Scott, racism crime on par with religious Odinism crime. Jussie Smollett commits crime, blames racism. R.A. executes a crime and blames it on the grist of the gossip mill, which is Odinism. Thoughts? Jussie Smollett commits crime, blames racism. Yeah, but he falsely accused some people of doing it. I mean, it was on video that he had people that he paid to do it. I don't think anyone's going to say that that's. I think, Laura, I appreciate your question. Maybe I'm missing it, but I don't see how it is. They're the two. Jody, thanks, Scott. Team can't wait to hear Scott's take on how this all plays out. It's getting interesting. I sure hope they let us watch it. I hope we get to see the prosecution's response. But remember, the prosecution, as soon as they heard that this opening memorandum, this brief filed by the defense on their motion for the Frank's hearing, which is basically saying prosecution lied, and they're flat out saying prosecution lied in their motions, flat out lied, saying lied. Bold, but it kind of looks like they're able to back it up, but we'll see what the prosecution comes with. And I hope the prosecution lets us see what they've got to say. I mean, was this good police work? Is this completely so far out of left field? It has nothing to do with anything. It's been completely debunked. Show us. I want to prove it, because right now I'm thinking, well, they've got something to work with. To be honest with you, I mean, we only read the 45 pages. Imagine all those witnesses. That would be the greatest cross-examination. So the individual man did this, and the individual man did this, and the sole individual man did this for 96 questions. That's what good cross-examination is. You break it down piece by piece, and you just beat it into their head. I don't know if the judge is going to allow them to do this. I mean, this is basically... they are throwing their whole defense out there as it relates to this particular case. So we're going to see if it has been enough. All right. That's all we have for you tonight. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Crime Talk.